And he succeeded in that case by working within the legal system, and we are all breathing cleaner air as a result.
I disagree.
Let me now address some of the things.
But Craigslist, if I could just say quickly, Craigslist was a media effort by Blumenthal to get national media attention. If prostitution's a problem, prostitution's a crime, refer it to the U.S. Attorney's Office, because the state attorney general in Connecticut has no criminal authority, and that wasn't mentioned by Tom, but no criminal authority. Other states, they do have criminal authority, not in Connecticut. Refer it to the U.S. Attorney's Office if it's federal, or to the state's attorney's office if it's a state. And if it's a problem with advertising when boy-girl ads are really prostitution posing as a boy-girl ad, then go after all these state newspapers that had the exact same problem, but instead it was just posturing to get national media attention.
I didn't bring up Craigslist. What I brought up was the social media networking sites where they have undertaken the social media sites are now fencing out sexual predators. Let's go back for a minute. When I was majority leader of the state senate, one of my hallmarks was bipartisanship. I worked. I instituted a policy of meeting with Governor Rowland's office and with Republican leadership before every session to go over every bill that was going to be introduced, because you know what? Sometimes they saw things that needed to be corrected in bills that our side missed, and we were able to cut down on the amount of time that was spent on the floor of the Senate and improve the process. As party chairman, look what I did. I was the person who exposed the Enron CRA corruption, the special interest influence that was the largest loss of taxpayer dollars in Connecticut history, a real inside deal that had no business. So that was clean government. I also worked hard to expose Governor Rowland's corruption, clean government. So I'm proud of my work as a Democratic Party leader.
And well, you should be, but
it wasn't partisan. It was
George,
doing the right thing.
When you say you had a good reputation of getting along with businesses, businesses had to get along with you because you were the majority party and you were in charge. So they had to go. They had to go to.
I received awards,
and they had to sit down with you and to be friendly with you because they had no other way to go through the legislature other than through you. But I will say,
that's wrong.
I've gone up against some of the largest corporations in America. When I started my own law firm 16 years ago, I worked for the SEC in New York, then a big firm in Boston, a big firm in Hartford. Then I started my own law firm 16 years ago. So I'm a business owner. I've actually made payroll, hired, fired, managed lawsuits, and those business skills are very important. But one of the things that I did when I started my own firm was I went up against a major oil company, Sun Oil Company, at that time an $88 billion company. And it was a take no prisoners approach. People used to stop me on the streets of Hartford and say, Martha, this company will destroy you and your firm. And I actually worked together with the Attorney General's office. We got a good settlement for these homeowners, and things worked out. I went up against a multinational company in the pesticides area, all the way up to the Supreme Court. I am not afraid of going up against, the large companies that are often treat consumers and employees unfairly. And I'm glad that you went up against Enron. And if you divulged to improprieties with the governor's office, that's great too. But I am not partisan, and the people of Connecticut deserve no politics in the Attorney General's office, no politics in a judge's chambers. There's just no place for it in law enforcement.
Next question.
Okay. There's been some discussion about the death penalty. You seem to differ on whether Connecticut should impose the death penalty. So let George.
Yes, I support Connecticut's death penalty statute, and if there were ever a time where it would seem to be justified, it would be in the case of the Cheshire home invasions. I just think that for certain, especially heinous crimes such as the Cheshire home invasion, it is the right and the just punishment. Having said that, I certainly respect the feelings, especially if they're religious-based feelings or morality-based feelings of those who oppose the death penalty. And it's not something I get out and campaign on, because I think that it's a very sensitive issue, and we shouldn't be using building one's political career on tragedy.
Martha. Yeah. I don't usually use first names, by the way, but you set
fine.
The tone for this.
Yeah, we're George and Martha. George is the old revolution, and Martha's the new revolution. But in which, I agree with a lot of what George said, except that as a matter of my faith, I'm opposed to the death penalty. As Attorney General, my job is to uphold the laws of Connecticut. The death penalty is the law of the land, and I will uphold it vigorously. Is it constitutional? Absolutely. It's clear that the death penalty is constitutional. So if it were challenged, I would vigorously enforce it or defend it. And let me say, that's in contrast with our current Attorney General, who threw the game in the same-sex marriage case. That case. Normally, our current Attorney General will go and argue a high-profile case like that, and instead he sent somebody else from his office to argue it, and they failed to make the most important argument that has been successful around the country. This isn't to deny same-sex couples' rights. There are many ways of giving them legal rights and recognizing them in society. Vermont did it through civil unions, and other states have done it in other ways. There are many ways to be respectful of human beings and their preferences and choices without redefining something. I'm not going to call your tie, purple just because people feel offended when it's green. We have to call things what they are, and marriage is between one man and one woman. Now, as Attorney General, I will defend that law, but I will never, and that's my job, without regard to my personal beliefs, but I will never throw the game in a case like that. I would have, if I had been our current Attorney General, I would have vigorously defended it whether I agreed with it or not, and I will do that with a death penalty without regard to my personal beliefs.
This is the third forum in which Martha has basically accused Dick Blumenthal of dishonesty and failing to discharge the duties of his office. And I think it's, frankly, I'm a little bit offended by it. I think that Dick Blumenthal, you can agree or disagree with him on an issue, but he's a very honorable man and always does right for the people of Connecticut.
Well, I would take a big issue with that characterization, since I met the man who was the swim coach for the Harvard swim team all 4 years, who was the one who got Blumenthal to take that off his resume, since he said to him, since I was the swim coach, the captain of the swim team, how is it that it's on your resume that you were, and we were there the same 4 years? So there, Vietnam and the rest. This is not about our current Attorney General, but
you've made it about Dick
well,
Blumenthal,
there's a serious honesty issue there. But there's a whole other approach that we need to take there. We need to be pro-law-abiding businesses. We need to restore common sense to the Attorney General's office, and that's what my campaign is all about.
There are a couple of other hot-button issues I'd like to hit because we're running out of time. Firearms, you have different stances on that as well.
Well, I have said I will uphold the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. That includes the Second Amendment. I mean, George, about 10 years ago, was on a panel saying that was old law. Second Amendment, it's not old law. The 10th Amendment, which allocates power between the federal government and the state government, is not old law. I will vigorously protect all constitutional rights, and will speak at the Capitol. George has been running with taxpayer money. I took no taxpayer money in my campaign, so you'll see no TV ads, you'll see no mail coming to you. But George is using $750,000 of your money, taxpayer money, to slam me with one tiny little piece of a speech at a Second Amendment rally. And I said to Colin McEnroe, I will as vigorously speak on behalf of the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Ninth Amendment, 10th Amendment, Fifth Amendment, property rights, eminent domain, just as vigorously on all of the amendments of the Constitution, but to cherry pick and somehow make it seem scary. I've said we need firearms training in schools. Many schools have them. It's a good idea to teach safety so that children don't get hurt by guns. The Eddie Eagle program does that. The DARE program does in many schools now. And it's great if you can do it without imposing a cost on taxpayers to have rifle teams. Many private and public schools have that. And some of the Connecticut shooters are the top Olympic athletes in the shooting sports.
The context of that quote, which was not taken out of context, the context of that quote is very much Martha's long-stated belief that having an armed citizenry is a foundation of democracy.
This is just baloney. I've never said this.
I'm characterizing it, but excuse me, I listened to you.
Yeah.
But
I've never said that.
You think that the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms is what sustains and
no, I've never said that. You're misquoting me, so let me speak for myself.
Then,
I've never said that.
We're not going to agree about that,
No.
but that's what you clearly have said. And
Find the quote.
Connecticut's gun laws make sense. They don't deprive
I have said they make sense. We agree on that.
They don't deprive any, but that's contrary to what you said in other public
No,
occasions.
actually not.
Yes,
I've
it is.
always said it.
Please.
Look at the Connecticut Law Tribune. I've said that they strike a balance between the legitimate rights of gun owners to bear arms and the rights of the state.
You would have voted for Connecticut's current gun laws?
I've said that. I think that Connecticut strikes a reasonable balance. I've said it in many forums. Look at the Connecticut Law Tribune months ago.
I've seen other quotes that
No,
are
I've said that I
entirely
think
contrary to that.
Well,
And even Connecticut's gun laws make a lot of sense.
You passed the assault weapon ban.
We don't take
Which
guns.
makes silly distinctions.
Excuse me. We don't. See, she said it makes silly distinctions that she maybe doesn't like. it
I've
so
never
much.
challenged the law. I just said it makes silly distinctions.
Our gun laws protect hunters, sportsmen. They don't deny law-abiding citizens the right to carry guns with an appropriate permit or to keep them in their homes. On the other hand, we keep guns out of the hands of people with a history of violence or people who have a propensity for violence. And so these are good laws that are saving lives. And Connecticut, as a result of these sensible gun laws, have has one of the lowest mortality rates for gun-related deaths of any state in the country.
But George, you put out a press release proposing for the taxpayers to have to pay to buy back guns. Buyback programs, if you look at even liberal groups from your own party, look at the Cambridge study, prove that they do not cut down on violence, that buyback programs end up having law-abiding citizens turn over old guns that are toy guns or guns that don't work. We end up having to pay for them. They're guns that never would have been in play in terms of crimes, and they come from law-abiding gun owners. The criminals don't turn over their guns.
I thought you just said you liked our gun laws.
No, you proposed a buyback program,
Yeah,
and
they
they're
can
highly
work.
ineffective. They're silly.
They can be a small piece of the
We're going to
puzzle.
come up on 2
Small
minutes,
piece
so
of the
let me
puzzle.
hit
This is
another
more of the
issue.
same of throwing taxpayer money at problems, including at your own campaign.
Abortion.
I support a woman's right to choose, and in fact, in 1990 as a legislator, I initiated and informally chaired the legislative coalition that codified, which means putting into law, the Roe versus Wade standard here in Connecticut. We're the only state to have codified the Roe standard. I'm very proud of it because if the Supreme Court were to overturn Roe v. Wade, a woman's right to choose would remain the law here in Connecticut. So it's what I'm very proud of. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, I will uphold the laws of Connecticut. Abortion is the law of the land in Connecticut, and I will uphold that. As a matter of my faith, my personal belief is that one person's right should never depend on being able to kill another person. So, but I will uphold the law of the land.
Health insurance.
Well, I vowed to join the 20 states that challenging Obamacare's requirement that we buy insurance, that the federal government has no power to require individual citizens to buy a product. It's certainly not interstate commerce when there's no commerce going on. The federal government would be forcing commerce. And it's certainly under the 10th Amendment, which says that any power that is given to the federal government is specifically given, but if we don't give that power to the federal government, it's reserved for the states, and if we don't give it to the states, it's reserved for the citizens. Very important to observe that. That is the framework. The Constitution is the framework for our freedom and our form of constitutional democracy.
Healthcare?
This law leaves a lot to be desired. It should be viewed as a work in progress, but there's some very positive aspects about it as well. For example, I've talked to families who couldn't get health insurance because a child had a pre-existing condition, or people who lost their insurance because they got sick, or people who couldn't feel they could leave their job for another job because of the health insurance issues. This law corrects these things, and we should not be turning back the clock to the bad old ways. Our health insurance system was a disaster. I do disagree with Martha. I do think that, and I'm someone who was a teaching fellow in constitutional law at Harvard University. I have a very strong constitutional background. I believe whether anybody likes it or not, it's not a matter of whether you like the law or not, that it is constitutional under both the Commerce Clause and
on that
Congress's
note,
authority
we've
to tax.
come to an end. They talk
Yeah.
about lively debate. This was lively debate. I thank you so
But
much.
we still
Thank you.
are friends.
Thank you for joining
So
us.
there you go.
Thank you for joining us
Yeah.
as well. Stay tuned. The news continues.
Thank you, Tom.